Hi guys, I just wanted to talk about Rachel Zegler. Now, I've been seeing a lot of stuff about her recently because of the Snow White thing, and can't, I just do not understand it. I mean, this is someone who's been basically dogged for 2, maybe 3 years now over the whole Snow White debacle. I mean, I don't know if it's a debacle really, but most of these, conservative influencers constantly be talking about how she's too woke and how that the whole Snow White film's an embodiment of everything that's wrong with Disney. But this film was getting destroyed long before it even came out. I mean, long before even the trailer came out. I mean, there are a number of separate controversies, which I'll go into, but the stuff with Rachel Zegler, she effectively came out in an interview and said, well, it needs to be more modern than the original Snow White, which I think came out in 1939. And she said how she thinks Prince Charming was a bit creepy, I think, or Snow White basically doesn't need a man, and how it's going to be a lot more empowering and not about a romance story, and that they won't have the seven dwarfs, and they won't be relying on beauty a lot more, standards a lot more. And those are just her comments in an interview that came out ages ago, and there was no initial reaction to it until it was picked up by some influencers, I think, online about 6 months after that, and since then she's just been destroyed for it, and I don't understand why. I mean, yeah, the original Snow White film, what she's saying is creepy. I think he just meant that maybe his persistence was a bit off-putting in that she thinks that we could create a story that doesn't just rely on romance, isn't just a flat-out remake of a previous Disney film, which, by the way, a lot of people who criticize Disney specifically don't like when Disney just carves out these remakes, cardboard cutouts, and just as a cheap way to make money or as tax write-offs. But Rachel Zegler just offered a different opinion than what most people think. She wasn't saying the first one was really bad. She just said how there's some parts of it where they thought they could leave out, or they could improve upon, or they could change. And there's nothing wrong with leaving them out and taking the story in a different way, or doing their own interpretation of it, which is what they did. But of course, people on the right mainly, or conservative influencers online, just killed her for this, saying Prince Charming's not creepy. He's I don't know if it's Prince Charming, but the man's he's great, and why can't you just have a romantic film nowadays between a man and a woman who love each other? And it's like this constant raging insecurity about how heterosexual relationships are being eroded away now, which they're not, and there's this woke empire that's taking over media and film and TV, and it's not, and it's just an interpretation of the film. And obviously Rachel Zegler wants it to be a film about how Snow White can maybe use her wits about, and how she can her rivalry with another woman isn't just solely based upon their beauty standards, which is kind of old-fashioned. But there's nothing wrong with the original one. It's just they want to go down a different path, which is fine. But obviously she was killed for some of these comments. People calling her woke, a feminist, a liberal. Also the word libtard, which is just disgusting. That's a slur about retard, which you should not use that word. That's a slur against disabled people. But anyway, people don't care because anything that they consider woke is free game for them, basically. And one of the biggest things also was her skin colour. So a lot of people went, well, it's Snow White, she has to be white because it's Snow White, as her skin is as white as snow. I think it may point out, it may be seen in the original Grimm's Brothers fairy tale, which I think is where Snow White came from, maybe. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's a Disney princess story. It's a made-up story. Why does her ethnicity have so much importance to the story? That's not important. And are you ever going to say to a child who's Latina or black or Asian, and say to them, I'm sorry, you can't dress up as a Snow White because Snow White's supposed to be white or Caucasian? You're never going to say that in real life. So why does it matter that the actress is of a different race? And I said in the previous video how people were losing their minds at another example of someone, and I was saying, I made the point how, well, that in the Harry Potter casting, how people were getting angry that Snape is going to be cast as black or Hermione is going to be biracial or whatever, and how ridiculous it is because. And there was a great examples of I've forgotten her name, but she's in Queen Charlotte, the main character. That's based off a real life person, and that person is white in real life. Queen Charlotte was white, I'm pretty certain, and Imani, I think is her name, she's biracial, and she was fantastic in that role. And it doesn't matter about her ethnicity, because as long as it's a good story that's told, and a good interpretation that's interesting and lively, and the actor does a great job, then who cares? And, you know, it's the same thing with Ariel. I think I haven't watched it, but people lost their minds with Halle Berry. I think that's her name. Not Halle Berry? Her name's Halle, definitely, I think. Or Haley. And she's mixed race, and she played Ariel, and people were a bit upset about that. But it doesn't matter, because her voice is unbelievable, and the singing and the acting is the most important part of the story. And I thought the whole point of Disney doing those films was to prove that, like, you know, anyone can be a Disney princess. It doesn't matter who you are, what colour your skin is, what race you are, what your ethnic background is. It doesn't matter. And I just find it bizarre how these conservative influencers, like I know Asmongold's done so many videos on it, and even like a year or two after Snow White's come out, they're still doing videos on her saying how her career has been destroyed because of this when it hasn't, and how she's just, you know, this awful person, and she's not. And people specifically targeted that Snow White film as a campaign, like to make it one of the most disliked trailers, to make it one of the lowest rated films on IMDb. I think it's like 1.4 or something out of 10. But it's just ridiculous. It's a Disney film, and yes, it is tacky sometimes when Disney put out soulless remakes of films, but Rachel Zegler is a really lovely person, from what I've seen in her interviews with the Hunger Games, and she's a great actress as well, and obviously an even better singer, which is the main point in Snow White. I guarantee you a lot of these people who are like in their 40s or 50s, like Shapiro or Megyn Kelly or Matt Walsh, I mean they're not all in their 40s or 50s, but these influencers would never have gone to watch this film in the first place, but because this Snow White film has been bundled together into this political toxic football, they've decided to just go for it and kicking it around, and they're still kicking that football around like today. And every time I see a thumbnail of Rachel Zegler's face with her eyes popped out, making her look crazy, it's just disheartens me that this still happens, and this, which is borderline on straight up bullying of her, that, you know, she's like this she's anti-heterosexual, she's, you know, anti-conventional romance stories. She's not anti that, she just wants a different interpretation of that, which is what people, you know, want. They want something different, something slightly new. And I guarantee you, if she'd never said those comments, people wouldn't have dogged her anywhere near as much. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's a film really towards under 18s, towards kids. I mean, obviously parents will likely take their kids, but it's for kids. I mean, obviously people might go along to enjoy the singing as an adult as well, but you just got to remember that this is, you know, it's just storytelling. It's about the idea that, and, you know, empowerment, and that a princess can do anything. Like, we have plenty of heterosexual relationships in TV and film nowadays. It's just the idea of, you know, the man being left out of the story is too much clearly for these people, and she's not anti-men, she just wants a different telling of the story, which is perfectly fine. And the idea that someone's race or skin colour is supposed to be important or integral to the story is just ridiculous. I mean, who cares? Snow White's not good or important or interesting because of her skin colour, or that she's white. That's just part of it, and it doesn't matter if it's not a faithful adaptation. I mean, I've heard there's the Harry Potter series coming out. They're saying it can't be faithful if Snape is black. And it's like, what on earth is that supposed to mean? I mean, no one read the books going, wow, it's really important that Snape's a white character. His ethnic makeup is never brought up, I don't think, in the book. They say he's got like sallow skin or something, and it's, who cares? As long as they do a great job as an actor, it should not matter. And, you know, everyone look forward to that, and I don't understand why, you know, it's like saying no black actor can ever do Shakespeare ever again. You know, that's ridiculous and stupid. Obviously they can. Or saying a black actor can never play a historical white person, because that would be unfaithful and wouldn't make any sense. Like, it doesn't, like you've seen in Bridgerton and Queen Charlotte, it doesn't matter. As long as they do good storytelling, good writing, good directing, good acting, it's fine. But people still seem to dog Rachel Zegler because they see her as like this embodiment of the left now, which was never supposed to be the case, and for some, she's had to just take it all on the chin, and everyone's been hounding her ridiculously for this, and all she did was say a couple of comments about how she thought it was a bit dated, and to be fair, it came out in the 1930s, I think, so it's like, it's not as an insult, even though people may think she's implying that. She's just saying, obviously, back then it's a great story, and, you know, some people could still love it now, but it'd be interesting to do a different interpretation of it, where romance isn't the centre theme of it. I mean, you still have that Snow White film. If you want to show your kids that or watch that yourself, that still exists. It's not been taken away. So I don't understand when people say, oh, these, you know, contemporary love stories or heterosexual relationships are being eroded by the woke empire. It's just a load of rubbish. And to get these people, see these people so fed up and angry about it still for years. And then there's the dwarfs as well. They said they were angry that they were taken away by Peter Dinklage. And, you know, that's just a judgment call whether you think it's the right thing to do or not. And then they brought them back, and like, people criticised them for being magical creatures, and some of them were dwarfs, some of them weren't. So then they cut their scenes, and they had animated dwarfs. Then people still criticised that because they said, well, could have done real dwarfs, even though in the original film everything was animated, including the dwarfs. So I don't really get that. It was kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing with the dwarfs. And I think the music was really good in the end. Rachel Zegler's got a fantastic singing voice. She was great on West Side Story and The Hunger Games. But for some people, just had this idea that this is a woke film because it can fit to this conventional story of a man and a woman loving each other. But like any movement away from that is horrible. And then they argue, well, why don't you just create another different film that doesn't rely on this? But if they did do that, these people would still find a way to criticize it, saying, you know, if a man, for example, in film or TV now isn't the dominant character, or for example, if a talented woman beats him in a fight, some people just can't understand that. Like Critical Drinker constantly says how it's not realistic, it's so stupid when a woman, you know, defeats a man in combat. It's pointless. Like, obviously in the real world, talented women, whether, you know, they're good at taekwondo, karate, or they're powerlifters, or they're strong, or they're fast, they can beat loads of average men in lots of things. That is realistic. But it's obviously too much for some people to grasp. But, you know, Keanu Reeves, or James Bond, or Daniel Craig as James Bond, walking through 50 people, like, you know, the end of the James Bond movie in Spectre, I think it is, where he's just shooting people, and there's like 50 people shooting at him, and he just doesn't get hit once, and he shoots and kills them all. Apparently that's realistic, but a woman being able to outthink and defeat a man in combat is just completely unrealistic. I mean, it's just ridiculous and pretty misogynistic. But I just, yeah, anyway, with Rachel Zegler, I just don't get the constant dogging of people, because now I think people are going after stuff she's done after this and saying, oh, her career's over, or she can't act anymore, or people just don't like her anymore after what she said. It's like, just let it go. You said your criticism of you said your criticism of it, but unfortunately this toxic political sideshow is completely detracted from what the film was going to be. It was never going to be. It was destroyed before it even came out, because people are just so offended nowadays by a handful of comments. And, you know, the same people who criticize this movie and Rachel Zegler so much hate cancel culture, yet they're so desperate to cancel someone for just saying their own opinion. You know, it's just, the hypocrisy is just unbelievable. And I feel sorry for Rachel Zegler. And, you know, you see on one of her YouTube channel videos, I think she said how she's had to take a lot of crap from people online, and you feel sorry for her. And it's like, it's been a year since then, and now, like, everything she does will be put under the microscope by these people, and they'll always bring up some of the crap. They'll say, oh, remember the Snow White crap. Like, it's a fictional movie for kids, there's always the original if you want to go and look for that. And there's plenty of Disney films where there's a romantic partner. I mean, Mulan, I don't think, or maybe has a romantic elements to the film, but the main story is her being, a fighter and a bit of a badass. And I don't understand why, if Rachel Zegler wanted to bring some of that to Snow White, why that's unreasonable. I mean, these people just, they're so insecure and terrified about this culture war that's trying to take away all these, conventional heterosexual relationships, that they have to just go after and destroy anything that shows women to be powerful, or anything that ever dares criticize men. And I think it's just such an overreaction, and people need to just calm down, say their thoughts concisely, and then leave it as that. But the fact that you're making like 10, I know it's your job, but you're making up to 30 videos a year on Snow White 2 years before and now 2 years after it or whatever, it's just bonkers. You need to let it go and stop dogging on Rachel Zegler and like having to go for her, making her eyes look massive in these thumbnails and making her look unappealing in these thumbnails to make her look deranged or crazy. It's just sad and childish and slightly misogynistic, I think, at this point, if you're still banging on against it. Like, just leave her alone. And I think this culture war is just getting way out of hand. It doesn't exist. It only exists when these people feel this sentiment that they're offended by anything that comes out which presents, women as good or anything as man as flawed. Just get over it. It's not that big of an issue. Anyway, say your thoughts in the comments. Someone commented on the video previously, and it was very nice of them and helpful. Comment to help get these videos into the algorithm, and make sure you like and subscribe. Thank you.